I worked in law enforcement for just over 32 years. After I retired, I started working for Larson Forensics. I had met John originally when he came into our police station and said he was from the FBI and offered to teach us some forensic stuff. And we kind of laughed at him, but we found that he was genuine and taught us some great stuff. And he found that we were doing things that a lot of other local police departments in the Chicago area didn't do. And so we began a exchange of information. He dragged me up to North Chicago at the FBI range to teach some of his people some of the things that we were doing. I mean, it's kind of odd that you have a local police department teaching the FBI things, but we were doing it. The process for determining the height of the shooter began with looking at all the crime scene photos. We started noticing things that didn't belong there that were there. Like there was drywall debris on a counter and on the stove in the room, and we were like, where did this come from? There's nothing around there. And we started looking at Ronnie's injuries. We noticed that this wound up here near her shoulder had burns for being a close contact, and saw that the clothing was torn and stretched, which would happen only if from the gases of the firearm blowing it apart. Well, we also knew that at trial they said a silencer was used. And we first questioned, would you get those explosive gases when a silencer is used? We also noticed that this wound was actually fairly level with a slight downward angle to it, which was odd if we went with the idea that Marni Yang was the shooter. We had no other close contact wounds. If that meant the gun had to be level when it was up here. So for Marni Yang to fire it, normal position for someone firing a gun is it is placed out somewhat in front. Now it's possible, but not probable, that it could be over someone's head. And then to go even higher, you're not going to get somebody shooting like that, or down low. So we looked at those things, and Marni Yang's height at 5 feet for this wound up here is over her head. For it to be level, it could not have come from her, Marni, firing in a normal shooting position. So we started looking at other things and went, well, where did this bullet go after it came out? And we've went through all the photographs, and then we got additional photographs that hadn't been turned over to the defense at trial, and we found more debris on the counter that indicated that a bullet hit the east wall of the apartment that had never been accounted for. Never was noticed, never was reported, and that we now had an explanation for the bullet hitting that east wall and then ending up on the floor behind the kitchen door in front of the sink, because it bounced off the wall and landed on the floor. The shooter's at least 5'9" or a little taller. Trajectory rods can be useful in an investigation because they can help track where the bullet traveled through or came from. But people sometimes believe that just sticking a rod in a hole will be magic. There's actually a fair bit of math that comes into play based on the angles and how it all works. It's simple trigonometry, if but and geometry, but in this case, the police attempted to put a rod through one of the holes in the kitchen wall, but it really didn't offer them any specific outcome. I don't believe that they knew what they could get out of it. They just had this idea, okay, we can stick a rod in it with a laser and it'll tell us something. But they didn't know how to interpret it. Larson Forensics actually teaches that at the Suburban Law Enforcement Academy here in DuPage. When we began our investigation, we found that there were digital photographs and film photographs taken at the crime scene. We were only given the digital photographs. The film photographs were never turned over until about 2 years into our investigation. We found that there was film and digital photographs taken at the crime scene. We were only given the digital photographs. When we identified things, we eventually were given the film photographs in the fall of 2019, which was 8 years after the trial. When we received those film prints, we found that there were several photographs that showed the police attempting to reconstruct the trajectory of the bullet through the wall that had never been turned over previously. The photographs include the police attempts at doing reconstruction of the trajectory with lasers through the wall that had a bullet hole. The film photographs included a laser trajectory rod that the beam initially landed on the kitchen door, and then if the door was opened, it went out into the hallway outside. Our investigation showed that the person who shot Ronnie Ryder was standing in the doorway of the kitchen and barely moved from that spot. The first shot to Ronnie Ryder was the shot that entered her left shoulder and exited out through her left upper arm. It was a close contact shot which tore her clothing, and the police never documented where that bullet hit within the kitchen. Our investigation extended the shot that went through her shoulder and out her arm. We believe that it impacted the east wall just under the kitchen cabinets, then bounced and landed on the floor in front of the sink behind the kitchen door. Our analysis of this showed that the shot to the shoulder that went under the kitchen cabinets is the only possible one that could have been like that. Every other shot is explained otherwise forensically. The tearing and stretching of the clothing around the wound to Ronnie's shoulder indicated that there was some sort of large muzzle blast with the gun being close. We investigated the possibility, because at trial it was said that Marni used a pistol that had a silencer attached. We analyzed how silencers work. We tested a silencer and both on and off a gun and found that a silencer does not eliminate the sound of a gunshot. It just reduces it because it contains the muzzle blast as it comes out of the end of the barrel. The tearing and stretching of the clothing around this wound indicates a silencer was not used. Our investigation showed that Marni was attacked as she opened her kitchen door to start her day. The assailant stuck his arm with a gun in front of her, shot her in the left upper chest, and from there inflicted the rest of the shots as she rotated and moved to the floor. Our investigation showed that Marni Reuter did not move across the kitchen and fall back to one of the cabinets. She just essentially stayed in place, rotated, and went to the floor, and then sprawled out on the floor. Marni Reuter did not fall back and hit the cabinets, as was speculated at trial. At trial, Dr. Montez said that the injury to Ronnie's left arm and wrist was related to the fact that her hand was over her unborn child. That is not physically possible. The way we reconstructed the trajectory, we found the shot that entered the right side of her belly, exited the left side of her belly, then hit her left arm as it's extended out to her side. Ronnie's left arm was still out because it had been opening the kitchen door. It was not out to necessarily brace her. We cannot establish that her arms were in any way protecting the unborn child. At trial, Dr. Montez testified that Ronnie's left arm was extended, and that would have required the bullet entering her left chest, then changing direction within her arm and up. But the bullet never contacted any bone or anything within that wound channel. I believe that Dr. Montez testified that the arm was up like this because when Marni landed on the floor, her left arm was somewhat like this on the floor. I believe that the other reason Dr. Montez testified that her arm was raised, or Ronnie's arm was raised, is to explain the height difference between Marni Yang and Ronnie, and it needing to be an upwards trajectory. In Tennessee, I rented a pistol with a silencer and tested on fabric swatches of similar cloth at various distances with and without the silencer on the gun to show what effect the muzzle flash had on the cloth. Our tests showed that the tearing and stretching of Ronnie's shirt indicated that no silencer was involved. Our tests in Tennessee confirmed that fact. As part of our investigation, we were asked to look at the video of the car alleged to be Marni Yang's on the day of the incident. As we got into the technical capabilities of the camera, we found that it wasn't sufficient to record enough detail to identify the car. Our investigation showed that there were additional problems with the video, including chain of evidence of how the film was viewed and how it was obtained. Our investigation showed that there were issues related to the timing on the video.